The race for state office. Tonight, Republican Lieutenant Governor candidate Bill Bolling. This is What Matters. Good evening. I'm Cathy Lewis. We continue our one-on-one conversations with the candidates running for statewide office, campaigning for your vote this November. We are very glad to have with us Republican Lieutenant Governor candidate Bill Bolling. Nice to have you with us today.
Thank you, Cathy. Thanks for having me on.
You are most welcome. As is our custom, we're calling you candidate, but I don't want you to think we don't know that you're the incumbent, because we are clear.
I understand.
We are clear that you are currently the Lieutenant Governor. I just wanted to make sure you didn't think we had lost our minds on that. Well, it's good to have you with us today. How's the campaign going so far as you're on the campaign trail? What are you hearing from Virginians?
Things are going well. You know, I think that we've been trying very hard in this campaign to run a positive campaign, a campaign that focuses on our background and record of accomplishment in state government, but also a campaign that looks forward, that talks about the important challenges facing Virginia. And I think the people of Virginia have responded well to that positive, issue-oriented message, and the polls are very encouraging. The enthusiasm that we see across the state is very encouraging. So if we keep working hard for these last few days of the campaign, I think we have a great chance of winning on November 3rd.
I think people might be surprised to note that you all campaigned very hard for a job that, by comparison, does not pay a whole lot of money.
Well, it doesn't. You know, in Virginia, the constitutional construction of the office of Lieutenant Governor is that it's still considered a part-time job, much like members of the General Assembly. Now, truth be known, to do the job and to do it well, you're going to put in your 40 hours a week, sure, and plus more on behalf of the Commonwealth of Virginia. But the salary of being Lieutenant Governor is about $36,000 a year. So unless you're independently wealthy or retired, most Lieutenant Governors still work full-time to pay the mortgage and send their kids to college. And that's true with me. I spend 3 or 4 mornings a week in my business office. I spend 2 or 3 afternoons a week at the Capitol or on state business somewhere across the state. And then 3 or 4 nights a week we're on the road, usually doing something related to state business or the political responsibilities that we have. So it's a very time-consuming commitment that one makes, but I believe passionately in the value of public service and helping give something back, make Virginia a better place. And it's a tremendous honor and privilege to have served as Lieutenant Governor for the past 4 years, and I hope I'll have a chance to do it for 4 more years.
So those mornings that you're in the office, you are an insurance person by trade, right?
I am.
You run an insurance agency.
I'm an independent insurance broker and work for a living just like everybody watching this show tonight. And, you know, I actually like that balance. I think it's a good balance to have a foot in the private sector and a foot in the public sector. Too often, I think people who get elected to government go off to Washington or Richmond. They become a full-time part of the process of government, and they forget what it's like to live under the laws that they pass. So I've found actually the balance to be challenging, but also very rewarding. Being in government has made me a better business person, I think, because I see what the government side goes through. And also being in business has made me a better government person because I know what it's like to run and operate a business and try to make sure that government lives by those same realities, especially those same fiscal realities.
And so it makes me wonder whether do you sell health insurance within your business?
I do not personally. We have people within our agency that do health insurance. I mostly do property and casualty.
I see, but that's been such an issue, and certainly will be an issue for the Commonwealth going forward as we look at the increasing Medicaid rolls and the like. So I wonder, as you think about the issue of health care in general, and I know that's not necessarily something you would be involved in directly, philosophically, what do you think about this great debate we've been having?
Well, I look at the health care debate from 3 different perspectives. First, from a quality perspective, we have the highest quality health care delivery system in the world right here in the United States of America. We don't want to change that. We want to make sure that we maintain a high quality system. But we do have challenges with accessibility, making sure that everyone can get access to quality health care, and affordability, trying to bring down the cost of health care and health insurance. So, what I think they need to be doing at the federal level is pursuing some kind of common sense reforms that help improve accessibility and affordability within the private sector without turning health care over to the federal government, because I passionately believe that in the long run that would destroy the quality of the health care delivery system that we have. Now, in Virginia, we've taken some steps to try and do that. I'm very proud of the fact that over the years, some of the legislation that I've worked on the most has dealt with health care. For example, as a senator, I was the senator who sponsored the legislation to create a children's health insurance program in Virginia. As a result of that, we're providing health insurance today to about 100,000 children in low-income families, kids that didn't have access to primary health care just a few years ago. But also, as Lieutenant Governor, I've championed the effort to try to make health insurance more affordable for small business owners and sole proprietors. We've passed legislation to allow small business owners to form group purchasing pools so they can purchase health insurance in larger quantities. We also this year passed a bill to allow insurance companies to offer small business owners more basic health plans, freed up of many of the mandated benefits that tend to drive up cost. And I've also championed, although we have not yet been able to get this passed, I hope we can in the future, I've championed tax credits for small business owners who provide health insurance to low-income employees. And then lastly, I've also championed the effort of Medicaid reform in Virginia, because Medicaid is the fastest growing area of our state budget. We need to get those costs under control and learn to stretch our Medicaid dollars farther, so hopefully we can address important issues like insuring more people in Virginia, boosting provider reimbursement rates, which are among the lowest in the nation today. So while we watch what's happening at the federal level, there are things we can do in Virginia to help address accessibility and affordability without adversely impacting quality. That's what I've tried to do in the past, and we'll continue to focus on that in the future.
I'm thinking about the issues that face the Commonwealth, and I note that transportation is certainly one of them, and I hope you had a good time getting here today. Not every candidate has had.
Today was a good day, but I've had bad days.
I can feel your pain there. I wonder, as you think about that issue of transportation, what role do you see for the Lieutenant Governor in that, and what ideas do you have? What proposals would you put forth that would deal with that transportation problem?
Bob McDonnell and I have put forth what I believe is the most comprehensive, realistic, and workable transportation plan that we've probably seen in Virginia for the past 25 years. If you look at the past 8 years, what we've tried to do consistently and without success in Virginia is solve the transportation plan by raising taxes. Governor Warner proposed a series of transportation fixes that involved higher taxes. Governor Kane did the same thing. Those plans have not secured passage in the General Assembly. And I think for two reasons. First of all, the people of Virginia don't support higher taxes. And second, there is no consensus in the legislature about raising taxes to solve the transportation problem. So what Bob McDonnell and I did was sit down and say, we have to get away from this non-productive debate about higher taxes that's occupied all of our attention over the course of the past 8 years. We have to think outside the box. We have to come up with some different approaches to solving the transportation problem. So we put forth a package that includes about 12 different funding sources for transportation, none of which involve general tax increases. If we can implement all of those things, we'll generate about $1.4 billion a year in additional money for transportation without raising taxes. But we've also focused on other things. We have a series of proposals that try to improve efficiency within the Department of Transportation to make certain that we're spending our transportation dollars wisely. A number of regulatory reform measures that will enable us to complete transportation projects more quickly, more on time, more on budget. We've proposed the implementation of a number of strategic changes to how we go about addressing transportation in Virginia. Sometimes small things like intersection improvements, timings of lights, changing of the HOV system. Here in Hampton Roads so more cars can access the HOV lanes, working with our federal partners to get more federal stimulus money for infrastructure projects here in Virginia. We believe we've taken a holistic approach to trying to address the transportation problem that gets us away from the debate about raising taxes, hopefully actually focusing on some things that we can get done so we can actually start building a transportation system for the 21st century and stop talking about building a transportation system for the 21st century.
And I think there are lots of people who would devoutly, we joke all the time on this program, it's not so funny, and our radio programs as well, that we could probably re-rack the shows of the last 15 years and probably not a tremendous amount has changed. I wonder though, this figure 1.4 billion.
Let me say though, Kathy, I think that's true. Not a lot's changed because we've taken a singular approach to trying to solve the problem, which is let's raise taxes.
But let's
and
talk
we've
about
got to get away from that if we actually want to get something done.
But people who've looked at the proposals have said, these are fine enough as they are, but the offshore drilling thing is years away. That's not something that we know we're going to be able to get money out of right away. They've looked at other elements of this thing and said, you could probably get some revenues there, but this 1.4 billion is a huge number. And the sense of it is that some of the critics of the plan have said, look, you just can't get that much out of that.
Well, look, I mean, our plan is not a perfect plan. We would never maintain for a minute that it is. But we think it's realistic. We think it's workable. We think it's something that's achievable. It can get 21 votes in the state Senate, 51 votes in the House of Delegates, and actually have a chance of becoming law. And if we can implement all of the provisions over time, it'll generate about $1.4 billion a year. Now, there are some short-term revenues in the plan. There's some revenues that kick in more in a medium range basis, and then some that are more long range in scope. This isn't a plan that's going to all kick in or be productive overnight, but large portions of it can be productive early on and from day one. So I think the fundamental question that we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to keep doing what we've tried to do for 8 years without success? And someone once told me the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Or do we want to try something different? We've taken a very pragmatic approach. Again, not a perfect approach, but we think it's realistic, we think it's workable, we think it's achievable, and we think it'll actually help us get started in the effort to build a transportation system for the 21st century. Now, on the other hand, our opponents have no transportation plan. They've offered up no vision on transportation. We know what they want to do. They want to raise taxes for transportation.
I want to talk about
but that hasn't worked in the past, and it won't work in the future.
Let's talk about Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads for a moment, because one of the things that is true in Northern Virginia, and certainly the effort was made here in Hampton Roads before it was ruled to be unconstitutional, was the idea of taxing of individual regions, taxing themselves, and returning those proceeds to that community to do transportation projects there. From a philosophical perspective, do you have a problem with that if the people, say, of Northern Virginia or of Hampton Roads said, maybe I like your 1.4, we can't quite get there, we want to do a little bit extra on our own? And I recognize that is assuming something that's a little Pollyanna at the moment, but assuming that, do you have a philosophical problem with regions being permitted to do their own thing when it comes to those kinds of issues?
No, I don't have a philosophical objection to that at all, as long as those are decisions made by locally elected officials with the advice and the input of their constituents. But what we've done in our plan is take a bit of a different approach, because whether you're talking about the state level or the local level, many of these other approaches still get back to this debate about higher taxes, which has just not been productive for the past 8 years. So what we've done, for example, is in this proposal that we've put forth, is we create regional accounts for Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads, and then we allow these regions of the state to keep some of the tax revenue that they're currently generating from designated revenue sources. existing tax revenue, not new tax revenue or not new taxes, and then use that revenue to help fund transportation projects within their regions of the state. For example, here in Hampton Roads, we've said that as growth of the Port of Virginia continues to occur and revenues, tax revenues from the Port of Virginia continue to increase, that we want Hampton Roads to be able to keep those future increases in revenues, tax revenues from the Port of Virginia, and use it to help address regional transportation projects. In Northern Virginia, we've done the same thing, but we've proposed allowing those localities to keep about 30% of the state sales tax revenue that they generate every year. So we're trying to achieve the goal of getting more money into regional transportation projects, but doing it through a better use of existing tax revenue and future tax revenue growth, as opposed to the imposition of new or higher taxes. We think that's a better approach. We think it's a more realistic and workable approach, and we think it's really the only approach that has a chance to get 21 votes in the state Senate and 51 votes in the House of Delegates. And as you well know, you can have the best ideas in the world, but if you can't get them passed in the General Assembly, you're not going to get anything done. And we've seen that despite 8 years of trying to raise taxes, that just hasn't worked. So if we want to solve the problem, we got to think outside the box, got to be a little more creative, a little more pragmatic, and I think this proposal that Bob McDonnell and I have put forward is the right way to do that.
As you look at the role of the Lieutenant Governor within the Commonwealth, certainly you have a role in the Senate, the tie-breaking role, but I wonder what other elements of the job would people be surprised by, and what are the elements of the job that you are particularly passionate about?
Well, constitutionally in Virginia, the Lieutenant Governor has two duties. One is to preside over the state Senate. The Lieutenant Governor is president of the state Senate. So every day that the Senate is in session, I'm there presiding over the Senate, much like the Speaker presides over the House of Delegates. The second constitutional duty of the Lieutenant Governor is, of course, to succeed the Governor in the event that he's unable to fulfill the terms and conditions of his office. Beyond that, the office really is what you make it. Now, in the past 4 years, I've had some challenges because I've been a Republican Lieutenant Governor working with a Democratic Governor. Now, Governor Creigh and I have a great working relationship. He's been wonderful to work with. But the truth is there are some things that a Democratic governor can't involve a Republican lieutenant governor in, and I understand that. So I've had to try to find other ways to help achieve my goals as lieutenant governor. For example, I've had a very aggressive legislative agenda each year that I've been lieutenant governor. We've been able to work with the General Assembly to get a number of the legislative initiatives that were important to me passed, things that help improve our economy, position Virginia to become the leading energy producing state on the East Coast. Some of the health care initiatives that we talked about earlier, a number of important public safety initiatives have all been a part of my legislative agenda over the past 4 years. I've also used the office as a bully pulpit to help talk about things that I passionately believe in. Health care is an area that I've spent a lot of time in as Lieutenant Governor. We've sponsored a major health care initiative every year that I've been Lieutenant Governor, focusing on things like asthma and cervical cancer, and most recently the Lieutenant Governor's Your Heart is in Your Hands challenge on obesity and cardiovascular health. I've traveled extensively across the state talking with groups about what's going on in state government. Obviously, as Lieutenant Governor, you participate in a lot of groundbreakings and ribbon cuttings and things like that. And I've also been actively involved at the national level. We have an association called the National Lieutenant Governors Association. My colleagues this past year chose me to serve as chairman of the National Lieutenant Governors Association. I've enjoyed working with that group. I've learned a lot. Sometimes you find things that people are doing in their home state that you can help replicate here in Virginia. So in all these areas, I've tried to be an aggressive and an effective Lieutenant Governor. Worked with Governor Creigh when I could on a number of important issues. When we've disagreed, we've tried to disagree without being disagreeable. I think that served the people of Virginia well. And then pursue these other legislative initiatives and other things that I believe passionately in. Now, for the next 4 years, I'm hoping that relationship will be a little different. I'd love to have a chance to serve with a Republican governor by the name of Bob McDonnell. That will give me a chance as Lieutenant Governor to be a lot more active within the administration, which I'd like to be. And Bob McDonnell and I have already said that in a McDonnell-Bolling administration, the Lieutenant Governor's primary responsibility will be to serve as Virginia's Chief Jobs Creation Officer, oversee our efforts to get the economy moving again and create jobs. As a businessman and as a political leader for 18 years now, I have a real passion for that. And I think that's the most important issue facing our state today, the need to get the economy moving again and create jobs, and I'm looking forward to being right at the center of that effort.
I hear so many people talk about that, and my goodness, it's a message that in this economy I'm sure that people enjoy hearing, but how exactly do you go about creating jobs in a government position?
Well, I think the national economic recovery will primarily be driven by factors at the national level. However, there are things we can do here in Virginia today to better position Virginia now to take advantage of this future national economic recovery when it begins, probably sometime in 2010. Most of the economists are telling us. So we put forth a pretty detailed plan. We call it our Jobs for Virginians plan. People can read about it on my website at billbolling.com. But we're focused on things like providing additional tax incentives to businesses that create jobs in Virginia, doing more to reduce the regulatory burden on businesses in Virginia to make Virginia the kind of place that people want to come to start up and grow a business. We've talked a lot about investing, even in these challenging times, in proven economic development and job creation programs. For example, we've proposed doubling the size of the Governor's Economic Opportunity Fund, which is the incentive fund that we use to attract new business and industry to Virginia, investing more in the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, the Virginia Tourism Corporation, the Film Office. Those are all things that can help lead us out of this recession. We put forth an aggressive plan to make Virginia the East Coast leader when it comes to developing traditional and renewable forms of energy, as well as new and emerging energy technologies. We're strongly supporting the effort to go and develop Virginia's offshore energy resources, which we think has tremendous economic benefit to Virginia. We've taken a strong position in support of defending our right to work law here in Virginia against a federal attack like that could come through the passage of card check at the federal level, which we think is an atrocious job-killing proposal. We've said that we're going to stand in firm opposition to tax increases because tax increases will kill jobs and drive the economy deeper into recession. We've put forth a number of proposals to improve the educational opportunities, particularly as they relate to skills development and workforce training and redevelopment. So there are a lot of things that we can do in Virginia today to better position Virginia to take advantage of a future economic recovery and lead the nation out of this recession. And if we implement the provisions talked about in our Jobs for Virginians program, I'm confident that 4 years from now we can look back and see that we've brought the unemployment rate down. We have more Virginians working. I mean, remember the order of the magnitude of this challenge. Our unemployment rate today in Virginia is 100% higher than it was just 2 or 3 years ago. There are 144,000 more Virginians unemployed today than just 2 or 3 years ago. So getting the economy moving again and creating jobs, I think, is the most important issue facing the state today, and we have an aggressive plan to do just that.
One of the things that that we've heard sort of behind the scenes on this is that you and Bob McDonnell both maybe wanted to be governor this time around, and y'all had a conversation, decided that Bob McDonnell would run first and then you would run after that. So is this then the first step of that process for you? Do you have designs on the governor's spot?
We're worrying about winning on November 3rd.
I appreciate that.
And then we want to be a good governor and lieutenant governor for the next 4 years. But look, if the people of Virginia will trust us to lead the state through these challenging times, if we can get this economy moving again and create jobs, if we can restore fiscal integrity to state government and turn our budget shortfalls into budget surpluses, if we can solve these transportation challenges that we've talked about today and show the people of Virginia that we actually are not just making promises but actually getting things done in leadership, then our hope would be that we would have a chance to take this, common sense approach we call new ideas for a better Virginia and have them working for the people of Virginia not just for 4 years but for 8 years. But right now that effort starts on November 3rd, and we're hoping that folks will give us a chance to help lead our state through these challenging times.
We have just a little bit less than 2 minutes left, and I want to be sure that you have an opportunity to respond to one of the issues that's arisen, which has to do with the attendance at meetings. One of the issues that's arisen is a concern about whether you've attended all the meetings of the commissions that the Lieutenant Governor sits on.
Right. Well, my opponent has said a number of things throughout this campaign that aren't exactly what I would call intellectually honest. This happens to be one. My practice of attending these board and commission meetings has been exactly the same as other lieutenant governors and statewide officials and cabinet secretaries before me. When the board and commission meetings have required my personal attendance, I've personally attended. But when they didn't, I've had those meetings covered by a member of my staff. I've been briefed on the meetings, I've reviewed minutes of the meetings, and I'm familiar with what those boards and commissions are considering. Now, interestingly, my opponent happens to have been a member of a few boards and commissions of her own when she was Secretary of Finance, and her attendance record wasn't exactly stellar. She missed, for example, 50% of the meetings of the Board of Directors of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership. She missed 75% of the meetings of the Virginia Tourism Corporation. She missed 100% of the meetings of the Transportation Accountability Commission. So her criticisms of me aren't exactly intellectually honest, because she knows my practice has been the same as others before me. They're also more than a tad bit hypocritical. Unfortunately, that's what campaigns sometimes become.
Bill Bolling, thank you for being with us tonight. The website, billbolling.com?
billbolling.com. Check it out.
All right, very good. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Cathy.
I appreciate it. These continuing conversations. Next week, our series of one-on-one conversations continues. We'll have both the gubernatorial candidates, Democrat Creigh and Republican Bob McDonnell. Now, if you want to view all of our candidate conversations, you can subscribe to our video or audio podcasts at itunes.com. You can reach us anytime online through our website, whatmatters.tv. Drop us an email to whatmatters@whro.org. You can join us on Facebook, and we'll also be glad to send you an e-bit each week with a look at what we're working on. On the radio, I hope you'll tune in to 89.5 WHRV FM for Hearsay. Join that conversation live each weekday at noon. Thanks for watching. I'm Cathy Lewis. We'll see you next time for another look at What Matters.